Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of TI Talks by Tech Informed. I'm your host, Ricki, as usual, and I'm joined by my glamorous colleague, our reporter at Tech Informed, Nicole Delonte.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be back with you, Ricki.
Yes, it is. Later in this episode, we will be joined by observability expert Roman Spitzbart from Dynatrace, and he's going to talk to us all about how observability can work hand in hand with the cloud to give your business security and a competitive advantage. But first, Nicole and I are going to discuss some of the latest news from the previous week, namely the new government in the UK and how their decisions could potentially affect tech policy moving forward. Nicole, it's been a whirlwind of a week. The Labour government's first week in power. Do you feel any richer than you were a week ago?
There's been a lot of changes. I don't know about richer, but there's been a lot of changes and a lot of good comment from industry on what they think about the new government and what it brings for them.
Yes, unsurprisingly, lots of people had a lot to say. Before we start talking about what people had to say, let's take a look at the Labour manifesto and what they said pertaining to tech. What stuck out to you?
What stuck out to me was their pledges to the NHS and healthcare. A few months ago, I wrote a story about how AI detected early breast cancer that some doctors didn't. It was quite a significant statistic, and things like that have been coming along in the NHS is so exciting for me. So to see in their manifesto that they said that they will harness AI diagnostic services, and they said potentially saving thousands of lives. That was really exciting.
And what kind of comments have we received at Tech Informed about sort of the health tech space as it pertains to Labour and the new government?
So we had a really interesting comment from Santosh Sahu, who's the CEO and founder of Charit, and he said that even though the UK is third on the list of the most health tech investment, the US is markedly more attractive, and he said that almost half of health tech businesses move from the UK to the US because there's more funding and there's also less regulatory uncertainty. He said we need to look at regulations that facilitate competition and collaboration in order to accelerate the UK's economy and create a more favourable environment for startups, which the AI startups are bringing these sort of technologies to health tech space, so we should be nurturing that.
Also in the last week, the Tony Blair Institute did a report that kind of suggested, or they're trying to encourage the government to implement more AI into the NHS. Which kind of goes hand in hand with what you're saying there. I just wonder, what that actually means in terms of, the success or failure of the NHS and the people that work within it. According to their report, more than 40% of tasks that are performed by public sector workers could be partly or wholly automated by a combination of AI software. But then what that says to me, or what they even say in their report actually, is that the amount of time that could be saved because of these AI could result actually in a huge reduction in the size of the public sector workforce. So massive redundancies and just basically replacing NHS workers with AI, which I mean, on the surface doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing, but what happens to those workers afterwards? Are they going to be, remunerated somehow? Or are they going to be retrained somewhere else? Or just, slung out onto the streets into one of the many, many food banks that we have in this country?
Yeah, it's interesting that they talk about replacing people. It's just obviously what people are so scared of. But at the same time, they also need people. And they talk about this in the report as well. You need smart people that are knowledgeable in AI to advance this. And you need huge upskilling because it's so new to all of us that is something that they will have to invest in quite significantly.
There's one more twist to the story, but I thought you might be interested to know about this report done by the Tony Blair Institute. Who do you think, not like a name specifically, but what kind of person do you think they would ask to help them make this report or influence this report?
Well, you would assume doctors and nurses that know what they're talking about.
How about ChatGPT?
Oh, of course. ChatGPT is very self-promotional.
The report says, we first used ChatGPT to categorize each of the 19,281 tasks on the ONet database in several different respects that we consider to be important. They used ChatGPT's analysis to come up with, to decide which of the tasks could be automated and which couldn't. So this whole report is basically like ChatGPT being like, yeah, I can do that.
I need ChatGPT's confidence. Look how much money I can save. Think about all these people. But I'm not going to take over.
AI in healthcare aside, is there anything else you think that, in terms of Labour's manifesto promises, that we might be looking forward to under this new government?
With the year elections this year, everyone's talking about misinformation and deepfakes, and that with cybersecurity, one of their pledges was to conduct a strategic defence review within the first year to address cyber attacks and misinformation campaigns, which is really interesting because misinformation is such a big topic at the moment, and with the rise of AI, everyone's quite concerned about it. We did find, maybe on the topic of deepfakes, the UK election wasn't that affected in the end. Everyone was quite scared. We had a couple with the mayor and Keir Starmer, but overall it wasn't that big of an issue. But we should talk about the reform candidates. The ones that everyone thought were just deepfake candidates.
Did we ever get any evidence either way to prove if there were fake ones or not?
Well, so to explain, there was this one candidate that had a very animated looking face. He looked a bit like a Disney character, and it was impressive that everyone pointed that out and said that's AI made. That guy does not look real. He has no digital footprint. People were trying to get in contact with him. He had one interview, but it was written. But then he did go on GB News and explained that he's a real person. They just didn't have a photo of him with the reform coloured tie on. So they made this AI mock-up of him with the reform tie on. Arguably, I'm not too sure he looks exactly the same.
I think it looks like him, just maybe like a picture from like 5 years ago, perhaps, with like a couple of like filters on top.
And if he didn't have the same coloured tie, he could have taken a photo of himself. Photoshop's been around for years. We can Photoshop a different coloured tie up. You don't need to go to, but maybe AI was quicker. This is the lesson that we've learned.
Also, how important is a tie? Like, is that really like...
It's the brand consistency, clearly.
Right, okay. Well, maybe we should get some tech-informed orange ties to wear for the next podcast episode. Another commitment that the Labour Party made on their manifesto was to develop a comprehensive cyber defence strategy to protect critical infrastructure, which is kind of similar to what we're going to speak about today with our special guest who is about to join us. We are delighted today to be joined by Roman Spitzbart, the VP of EMEA at Dynatrace, which is a global observability platform based on AI and automation, where Roman has been for the last 10 years. And with over 20 years of experience in software development, I'm sure he is going to have a lot to tell us today about cloud and digital transformation and observability and everything, all the good stuff that we need. Welcome to TI Talks, Roman.
Thank you for having me.
Nicole, would you like to ask the first question?
Yes. Hi, Roman. So it would be great to speak today about how digital transformation has affected cloud environments in 2024. So in Dynatrace's recent report, it said that because of digital transformation, people are finding themselves in cloud environments that are much more complex. Why do you think that is?
So it's the complexity is based on, I would say, two things. One, it is the use technologies that allow us to divide applications in smaller and smaller pieces. You might have heard the terms microservices, which really comes from, rather than having one big monolithic application, starting to put it into smaller pieces that are interacting with each other. Each of those small pieces gets updated independently. So you have an ever-changing system of small pieces that all communicate, that all interact with each other. And that's where the complexity factor really comes from. It's no longer that every 6 months are you doing something. You have a lot of small pieces. You change them independently. You change them very frequently. Yet they still all need to work together perfectly every single time so that your end users are getting what they came to.
Are you finding that this is resulting in people pulling back or delaying their transitions to the cloud?
So I haven't seen anyone or any of the customers, the prospects, the companies that I talk to actually delaying things. It's for them more about finding ways how to deal with that complexity as good as they can. And dealing with that complexity is something that drives the need for observability. First, you need visibility into the whole complex system before you can even make decision. And it also is something that a lot of organizations are starting to address with getting their humans, their teams help, whether that is through AI systems that just allow them to quickly triage problems or security incidents, whether there's advanced AI systems that really help them pinpoint the root cause so that they, when tasked with keeping this complex system alive, running, and well executing and performing every single time, they have the best support they can. But they're definitely not delaying it because, quite honestly, it is something that can't be stopped. The digital transformation can't just be halted. Hey, give us a second. We need a breather before we continue.
So with multi-cloud environments that are so complex, how does this make businesses more vulnerable to security risks?
So where these complex systems increase security risk is based on two things. One, it is based on you have a lot of small bits and pieces. So you need to be very diligent as you change your system, as you add things, that you're not introducing security risks. And then there's the second aspect of zero-day exploits. So what's meant by that is security risks or security vulnerabilities that were not known before, but are already live in productive systems. So you have these complex systems, and then suddenly one day somebody tells you, hey, there's a new vulnerability in, for example, a commonly used library. Are you affected? How affected are you? And how, in which order should you address those systems, those vulnerabilities? Because chances are it's not just one piece, it might be 15. So which of the 15 do you start with? Which is the one is the highest exposure? To just give you an example, you might have heard about Log4Shell, which was a very publicized security vulnerability found in a library used by probably every Java software project in the last decade. Now, with a system, with a solution like Dynatrace, within minutes, our customers knew not only if they were affected, but also which systems, if they were exposed to the public, if they were interacting with customer data, because obviously those are your most critical systems. So it's this combination of making sure that an ever-changing system is secure for every known vulnerability. And the second part, it's the quick reaction time to zero-day exploits so that you can actually get ahead of those things as quickly as you can.
We spoke to one of Dynatrace's customers last week, Soldo, which is a fintech platform that works with enterprises, and they said the same. They said that they had a Log4Shell vulnerability that Dynatrace flagged to them on day zero.
Yes, it is super important to be quick in reacting. And the second aspect, it's about prioritizing, because a lot of times platform will have vulnerabilities that, yes, are there in theory, but can't be actively exposed for whatever reason. Maybe the library is not used in a certain way. Maybe it's not exposed to the public. So it's also about helping those teams to make sure they focus their effort on the right things, not getting to zero, because zero, in my experience, is very, very rarely achieved, that you have every known vulnerability always patched and always closed. But it's about making sure that the high-risk ones, the ones that could actually be exposed, those are the ones you need to close. And then when you have time left, then by all means, people will work down. But it's about, well, by that time, probably new ones get added to the top of the list. So it's an ever continuing process trying to get your vulnerabilities closed, while, of course, the application changes. It's not like a static system. You are, of course, and I can guarantee you that Soldo is building out their platform. They're adding new capabilities. They're trying to tackle new use cases. And every change comes with the risk of it's another vulnerability, it's another security risk.
So coming back to multi-cloud environments, does the complexity and the amount of data that people are finding themselves perhaps drowning in delay the potential for innovation?
I wouldn't say it delays innovation, because fundamentally using a multi-cloud strategy or a hybrid strategy where you're using cloud, on-premise, you're trying to marry your existing old world, if you want, with the new world, which is very often based on public cloud vendors or hyperscalers. I think it's not fundamentally delay innovation. I think it can become prohibitive in the sense that it limits the resource you can put on innovation. If you look at some of our customers, when they started engaging, and very often when I in my function talk to prospects and customers, they're typically at the beginning of their journey together with Dynatrace. And very often I found that a lot of their resources, the majority of their teams are focused on, I could very, very crudely say, keeping the lights on, keeping the systems running, just making sure that things get patched and that they are addressing performance issues and things like that. And by using observability and security solutions, what it really helps them is by automating things, by using AI to get to root causes quicker, to pull back on that and to get more resources to focus on innovation, because that's ultimately what sets you apart from your competitors. It's not about that your platform is the one where issues get fixed most quickly. It's about innovating. It's about finding new things and about being able to deliver ultimately new capabilities quicker than your competitors can.
That actually brings us to the next question quite well. In your opinion, how can businesses leverage observability and software like yours to gain a competitive advantage?
So I think leveraging, I would say, the right tools is the important. Most organizations are not completely blind. They are using tools, and very often they're using a large number of tools, a number of point solutions. You have something for this, you have something for the other, you have something for the infrastructure. Every cloud vendor comes with some level of monitoring, some level of observability. So what very often you find that are not blind, but they don't know where to start based on the amount of data they get. Which tool do I look at first? If two of my tools are, for example, contradicting themselves, which one do I believe? Do I believe my hyperscaler or my cloud platform? Do I believe my on-premise? Do I believe maybe a third-party test I run? And with a platform like Dynatrace, it's really about consolidating all that data into a single 360-degree view of your application. So that you are, when something happens, not start finger pointing, well, my tool shows me this or my tool shows me that, but you are getting really into a proactive mode of like, okay, this is where the issue are. Let's focus on fixing the issue rather than finger pointing on whose tool shows the right view and where it might.
I was just going to ask actually, what are some of the best practices for successfully implementing observability in a large enterprise, and what pitfalls could maybe be avoided? You kind of alluded to it there, but I wonder if you have any more suggestions.
I would say best practices are really around making sure that you cover you have a proper strategy in the sense of which are your most important applications. Because it's not about every single application to be covered, but what are your most important things? What are the applications or the systems that drive your business? Focus on those first. Make sure that they are covered. Make sure they are covered not just from observability, but like we said before, also from a security perspective. Because a lot of time, observability focuses a lot around performance, around stability, uptimes, the systems available, and things like that. But the security aspect is at least equally important, because it doesn't help if your application's up 100% of the time. It's always responsive, but it can be exploited continuously. That's also not good either. So it's the combination of both and not focusing on just one of them, which is a mistake that I sometimes see organizations make by prioritizing, oh yeah, we need to focus on observability, forgetting about security, or the other way around. It's the combination of both that really provides a secure and available / performant application.
You've been in this field for 20 years. How has the concept of observability evolved over the last 10, 20 years, and what kind of future trends do you foresee shaping that space?
I think over the last decade, I think where the whole space has really evolved from what used to be called monitoring towards observability. It is about joining different views, different perspectives into one single view. Even Dynatrace, we started with basically tracing, which means following end user transactions through the system. It's then adding the real user perspective. It's adding log files, the infrastructure that you run on, the cloud platforms that you leverage, and putting all those things together, adding security. For example, I can tell you 10, 15 years ago, security was nothing that was mentioned in the same context of monitoring your applications. And where I see us as an industry and also us as a platform really evolving towards, it's not about data capturing anymore. data capturing is a solved problem, I would almost. There is industry standards that are evolving, for example, like open telemetry. We have standards on how to capture metrics, log files, traces, and it's turning a lot more towards, so what are you doing with this data? It's not about capturing all the data, throwing it into a platform so that when you need something or when something happens, you then have a clever human that knows how to put all this data together and how to sift through it and what to look at and what to ignore. But it's really about putting data into a platform that can help you make sense out of it. And that's where AI really becomes this key point. And AI is a very generic term that in that context, I'd like to break up into three things. Yes, it's about generative AI, which I know is all the hype. We all heard about ChatGPT and how generative AI is revolutionizing a lot of areas. But in our space, AI means a lot more about predictive capabilities, so that you can get proactive. Oh, my system is about to crash in half an hour. I'd rather know it now and be able to do something than know after the fact. And the second part is causal AI. And what I mean by causal AI is that when issues occur, and they will occur, no customer I've ever worked with gets as proactive so that no issue ever occurs. Sometimes something slips. When something occurs, you need a system that understands root causes, that understands cause and action, so that you are not just hunting through, okay, there's 15 different things that went wrong. And again, we're relying on a human to say, now figure out which of those 15 is the one you need to fix so that the other 14 go away as well. But having a system that really helps you in pinpoint. Because that typically is a high pressure situation. Your system, imagine you're responsible for a production application, for a fintech or a FinOps platform that customers are using, and that platform is down. I can guarantee you half an hour, your CEO is probably start writing emails in the sense of like, so when are we going to be back up? What's going on, guys? What's happening? And in that type of situation, you need a system, you need every single support you can get. And that's where AI in our platform, in our solution, has found a really great place in this high pressure situation to help people make sense out of the data quickly and get into, okay, we know where it is, we can start working on fixing it, rather than we're still looking through the data, we're still hunting for where it might come from.
So I guess just final question then, in terms of Dynatrace, what are you guys doing right now? Is there anything that we should be like waiting, any announcements that we should be waiting for? Any like secret projects you want to share with us?
Well, as a public company, I can't obviously comment on all the great things that are brewing in our labs. What I can assure you is that there is currently more than 1,400 engineers and developers that are constantly working on the Dynatrace platform, evolving it, bringing in new capabilities, making the existing ones more robust, and fundamentally really working on bringing data together. That's really what our mission is about, bringing observability, security data together in one platform, and then being able to apply cutting edge AI technology or algorithms on top of it so that you can get value out of the data. It's not about, I don't want to have the best platform where you throw in all the data. I want to be the platform that provides you the most insights, the most value for what you put into it.
Amazing. Thanks very much. Nicole, do you have anything else you want to add?
Thank you for joining us, Roman. It was great to speak to you and find out about how observability can help make multi-cloud environments feel a lot less daunting and complex.
My pleasure.
So Nicole, how did that go for you?
Yes, that went really well. It's good to keep up to date with what's going on in the current cloud environment, and then know what you can do to improve your security at the same time, and potential digital transformation opportunities, and what's coming up in the future.
Yes, you don't want to be caught with your head in the clouds. Wow, tough crowd. So on that note, thank you so much for listening today. And thank you again to Roman for joining us. Thank you, Nicole, for being my amazing co-host.
Thank you for having me back on, Ricki. It's been a delight.
And to all of our loyal listeners, we will see you again soon. Thank you. This has been TI Talks. I have been Ricki. Bye.